New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today is a bit of an unusual program. I don't normally talk about current events on New Thinking Aloud. I like to keep the focus on timeless issues, but today we're going to talk about an event taking place this summer and hopefully annually thereafter, the Psi Games International. And my guest is Hakim Eisler, who is the creator of the Psi Games. Hakim served as a sergeant in the Army's Psychological Operations Group, or PSYOP. He is a dedicated practitioner of remote viewing and mind sight, or extra-ocular vision, as well as a martial art known as ninjutsu. Hakim is also a published author of 5 books in the area of martial arts and survival. He has appeared on numerous TV shows, including Discovery Channel's Naked and Afraid, as well as Naked and Afraid XL. In addition, he is an advisory board member of the Monroe Institute and a board member of the Center Lane Project, focusing on preserving Ingo Swann's controlled remote viewing. Hakim is based on the East Coast, and now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Hakim. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Hey, Jeffrey, it's great to be here, and I'm feeling really blessed today. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's talk about your background a little bit. It's very varied. You're an entrepreneur, a martial artist, a remote viewer, and many other things. As far as I can tell, a survival specialist. So let's give our viewing audience a sense of who you are and how you came to be the founder of the Psi Games International.
Yeah, so I've been in consciousness work for a long time, but really a lot of this really started to take shape when I moved to Ohio to train in this very rare martial arts called ninjutsu with a gentleman named Stephen Hayes. And so as I grew under his tutelage, there are like 9 different abilities that the ninja would have. That was kind of, they were these wilderness people, and they had these abilities that they've kind of, were inheriting from different practices, Buddhist and Shintoism and things of that nature, and Shugendo. And so they kind of had this understanding of using nature and understanding nature and allowing themselves to develop these abilities like remote viewing, like being able to sense danger, manifestation. And so that really fascinated me. And I was a really quality manifester in my life, just naturally. And so that led me on this journey of really exploring more. I went to the Army and became a psychological operations sergeant. Then I got out and I started to explore remote viewing and mind sight and wilderness, immersions and nature immersions. I went on the show Naked and Afraid. I ended up in the Himalayan mountains, and I had this very profound experience being naked, surviving in 30-degree weather off the land, eating everything from snails to worms to leaves, and just had this profound awakening. And so that really sparked my journey into the more inner depths. And now here we are at the Psi Games, this idea of how do we bring make psychic abilities very cool for the next generation, in the sense that these youth have these abilities, but we tend to shut them off because we come from this very materialistic, reductionistic kind of environment. And so logic kind of takes over. And how do we make it so that these youth who have these abilities connect with the adults and the elders who have this knowledge and research, who have been doing this research for a long time, and kind of grow this to the next level? What does that look like? And so the Psi Games is really a place where we can forge communities, where we can celebrate psychic abilities, where we can support one another through research and scientific rigor, but also through fun and acceptance, and where all that can come together. And really the possibilities are endless in my view.
Now, you've talked about youth who have cultivated psi abilities. Are you thinking about young people getting martial arts training?
So not necessarily martial arts training, but that's kind of how in my own personal life it was sparked. I saw all of the youth that I was teaching at my martial arts schools, and they would pretend to be these animation characters like Naruto, and they would do these finger weavings and mudras, and then they would say these words, and then they would pretend like they were shooting flames out of their mouths. And I'd say, hey guys, there in our martial arts, there's these kind of cool things that you can do. And they would say, well, show me, sensei, and I'd be like, oh, and that got me to thinking. I was like, well, how did I do it? Well, I had to train with my teacher for 24 years in the middle of, the forest in Ohio, and like do things in the little Miami River where I had to do all these things. And I was like, these kids, they're not good. They want something now. They're not going to go through all of that without some like real experience. So that set me off on searching. And I found these protocols like remote viewing, like mind sight, like all these different things. And that really set me off into a new perspective of where I can have youth who have these psychic abilities, have these experiences that have proved to them that these things exist, so that they can move to the next level.
Now, you've also just mentioned mind sight, blind reading, and I know that's an ability that you have studied, and I think it's fair to say, based on what I've seen, you seem to have mastered that ability.
Well, thanks. I don't know about master, but I do really well in mind sight, and it's a very powerful skill to have, because it's not just about training your own personal intuition, but it gives you a very easy way to understand that we are capable and we are more than our physical bodies, and we are connected to everything. And so I've trained with many of the really high level folks that are out there teaching this stuff. And I've been able to incorporate that in my own teachings with my martial arts practices. My teacher did stuff like this back in the 80s and 90s. But when I came around, he did it just for certain people. We didn't do it as much. And now I'm really wanting to make sure that the next generation believes in their abilities, their own personal power as these multidimensional human beings that has, a multitude of possibilities and potential.
Well, let's talk about mind sight. More specifically, how would it work in the Psi Games if you're having a game, a competition involving mind sight? What would that look like?
Oh, that's great. That's great. So one of the ways that a competition could look, and I got to be careful so that I don't give away the actual competitions that we're going to do on the show. So that, someone would be blindfolded, and they would have some earmuffs on so that they couldn't hear sound. And we would monitor very closely to make sure that, there's no way for them to get information other than from their connection with the field or with, using their mind sight. And so you might have an object that's obscured by something, maybe it's they're wearing a blindfold, but maybe there's also a sheet or a veil in front of a color or a card, and they have to tell you what card it is. And or something in that nature. Or you might have something in a box and they have to see in that box and tell you what it is. And so the idea, which is really tricky, because the idea with mindsight is that part of it is you being able to actually see through the blindfold. So by some other means, you're able to see what is actually happening. You have this very, very clear image of what's happening. But then there's also people who have, it's almost like a remote viewing type thing, but more in a local perspective, where you're actually perceiving it, but you're not seeing it. You perceive that it's red, or you perceive that it's the ace of spades or something of that nature. And so, it's a very interesting dynamic of how we test people and how we train people, and then how they're going to actually have a chance to compete. And so that's why, that'll give you a good example of that.
It's a new thing, I suppose, at least in modern America, for people to actually be competing on psychic tasks. We sort of have this idea that these are spiritual gifts and you're not supposed to show off.
Yeah. And I mean, there's Patanjali talks about it in the Yoga Sutras. Be careful when you get these things called the siddhis, these abilities. As you get deeper into meditation, these abilities will start to unveil and start to show themselves. And so if we get wrapped up too much, and he warns against, if you get wrapped up too much in that, it might bring about the wrong outcome. And we do, as a culture, we tend to have this kind of negative feeling sometimes towards competition, and say, oh man, competition, that could be bad, especially we're trying to be loving and spiritually awakened. And it's like, yes, that's true too. But I think it really depends on the culture that you build around what you're doing. So if this is a culture of, I'm better than you, I can do this on a different level, and you suck, or something like that, then that would be different than, oh man, hey Jeffrey, you did really well, and you actually performed at this high level. Can you help me get to that? Because it's inspiring me now. So maybe competition can sometimes be loving, caring, and inspiring, not degrading and mean and something that puts people down. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish. And in that, we feel that if we have a lot of people operating and embracing their spiritual gifts, then maybe we realize that we are more connected. And maybe in that realization, we see the love and we feel the love, and we're able to spread that love in different ways. And so in my realm, in the places that I've gone, when you start to experience these gifts, you recognize that there's no separation between you and other people. And the people that are in my world that have experienced this become more loving, become more compassionate, become more connected. And so if we could create an environment where that's the goal, how do we get to the next level, the highest level of what we can accomplish? Maybe that's also the highest, that takes us to a greater level of compassion and love. And hopefully that's the outcome. And I think we, as the people involved in the Psi Games, set the tone for that. I'm not coming at this from hey, I want you to beat that guy and, like in a martial arts tournament. I'm coming from this from a perspective of love and compassion, and wanting to see the next generation carry on the torch and believe in themselves, and believe in the full dimensional aspects of who they are in the inside and the outside, and how we are all connected. And I think as long as hopefully, again, I'm just a human being walking in this realm, I hope that by having that intention and having that in my heart, along with the people who I am asking to be a part of this, and it's in their heart and in their intention, that we create a new way that things are done. We create a new paradigm where it's not about, I'm better than you, my country has to blow up your country or has to get this skill first, but more of, hey, let me help you explore your talents a little deeper.
I do understand that in various cultures, typically indigenous cultures, Native American cultures, for example, that occasionally shamans will get together and will what would be demonstrate for each other the kinds of things that they can do.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. And that tends to be, from what I understand from my history and study, is that tends to be a very happy event. Nobody's leaving there angry, and if anything, I think those guys leave inspired sometime. Like, whoa, I didn't know Jeffrey could do that. I didn't even know that was possible. Let me go off into, my part of the woods and have fun with this and explore it a little bit, some of the things that we know now with extra-ocular vision, which is mind sight, seeing without your eyes, and remote viewing, was because people dared to challenge themselves. I know, hearing about Ingo Swann, they wanted him to just keep looking in this box all the time. Hey, tell me what's in the box. And he was like, I'm going to quit if you guys keep asking me to look in this box. I want to go out and explore. Let's see what we could do with this thing and have fun with it, Mm-hmm. And because of that mentality, we were able to start seeing, oh, you can do other things with this. Mm-hmm. You can look at the moon maybe, and you can, there's greater application here and greater abilities for humankind. And so, yeah, I definitely hear you on that, and I think that's another example of people with these abilities getting together and inspiring one another.
What will some of the other events be like at the Psi Games, which incidentally is scheduled to be held in Charlottesville, Virginia this summer?
Yes, Charlottesville, Virginia, August 1st to the 3rd. And so I have 5 categories. The 5 categories are remote viewing, mind sight, precognition, psychokinesis, and pendulum dowsing. And the reason I chose that for this round of the games, I mean, there could be other things like telepathy and so on and so forth. And we will have some fun games there for that, was because, in my opinion, and based on my research, many of these skills kind of share the same, there's the mechanism that's behind those skills kind of overlap in ways. And so the chances of me finding somebody, to compete who was dealing with remote viewing, but also had this kind of mind sight experience as well, was probably greater than me asking somebody to, dabble in this particular thing, and then on top of that have like clear audience or something like that, Mm-hmm. So I was looking for some skills that people were already practicing in big groups out there, that they can come together and they can kind of, compete and have fun in these different aspects.
Well, I think the challenge for you, I would imagine, is that this has never been done before. So that it's not as if there are teams of people waiting to compete.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It has never been done before, and that's why I was skeptical. This came from me, Jeffrey. This came to me as a download. That's the term that people kind of can understand in the consciousness field now. You just kind of have these moments of inspiration, this musing, and you're like, whoa, what is this what's happening here? And I still was like, I looked out there and nobody had done it, and I was like, I don't have time to take that on, but something magical kept happening where these breadcrumbs, these moments kept popping up, where I was like, oh, that relates back to the Psi Games. And I'm like, but I don't have time for that. And then I'd move on with my life, and then boom, oh, that relates back to the Psi Games. And it was like the universe kept saying over and over again, like, you have to do this. And so once I got out of my own way and stopped thinking about it logically, here you have this guy talking about connecting more with his deeper self, but still thinking logically and like shutting these messages down. Like I said to myself, I have to try this. And when I told it to people like yourself, like other folks, there was support there. There were people who were like, yes, this could be something. And we think that, this, and there's support for you in this place, and there's support for you in this place. And I started to say, well, wow, there really is. This may be the time for this to happen, because people are awakening to this with like the telepathy tapes coming out, and with more people talking about UAPs and NHIs and stuff like that. It just, and psionic, people. And it just seems like there's a lot of conversations happening where people are embracing their collective and individual powers, and seeing how, we can take this to the next stage of human growth.
Well, there's a segment of our population who thinks that none of this is real. That you obviously must be deluding yourself, because anybody applying scientific principles and common sense would know that everything that you've talked about so far is impossible. How do you address that?
Yeah, we've had over 100 years of empirical data by really, 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 really smart, well organized scientific minds that have shown that these abilities exist, and that they're doing it. We had the Army, for the remote viewing program, run this program for 20 years. And there's a debate on whether or not that they actually, that was actually stopped. And now we have new whistleblowers coming out saying, nope, we're still kind of using psionic, we call them psionic assets now, and we're working with, communicating with different beings and stuff like that. And you're like, whoa, so that's kind of proof there. But I think Joe McMonagle and Ed May, two individuals who've both been on your show. Joe, I've trained with. I've gone through both of his courses at the Monroe Institute, and he was saying, as well as Ed May, that there's more evidence for psi phenomenon being real than there is for the use, or for aspirin, for you to take an aspirin, for the research done on whether or not an aspirin works. So if a person gets out of their own way and they actually do real homework, not skeptical just to be skeptical, but skeptical to find a truth, and doing the homework, they will find, doing that homework, that the research has been done. It was quality research, like with Jessica Utz and the research that she did when she was brought in to help prove whether or not the psychic, that remote viewing was a real thing. There's been enough research out there for a person, if they truly want to find it, that they can find it. This is a real phenomenon. This is happening to people all over the place. Now, whether you choose as a logical human being to accept it just for whatever reason, maybe you have different belief systems or whatever that holds you from not believing in that, that's different. But the research is done. The research is there. You just have to be open to it. And so that's what I would say to them. Go do your homework.
Excellent answer from my point of view. On the other hand, there's also a very sizable portion of our society where they would say, yeah, this stuff is real and it's evil. It's diabolic. It's demonic. Especially where you are in the South, there are a lot of people who hold that belief. So how are you going to address those concerns?
There's all of these different constructs that we have out there that kind of hold us back from really exploring our power. And I feel like sometimes those things may have been, from a psyop perspective, it makes a lot of sense to create an environment where people pass their power on to another entity or another person. So that person can keep and maintain a certain level of power. And then you give up your own power. And so I think sometimes when I talk to people who are saying that, I say, well, why is that? Why do you, if it's happening to you, or if you know people it's happened to, why are you calling that person evil? And then quite often those conversations are like, well, I was told, or, my belief system says that a normal person shouldn't be able to do this or can't be able to do this. And I wonder how much of that is human beings trying to maintain power constructs than it is actual something that comes from a spiritual origin. Because when I dive into meditation and when I know people from different backgrounds, whether you are Jewish or Christian, who really do deep meditative work, they don't tend to talk like that. It's the people who rather be more in the physical, the gross aspect of their lives, who just like to read and believe. They tend to be a lot more like that. And so I don't know what to really say to those people other than I don't have to defend the light we have. I just have to help people explore and grow in the light that they have so that we can grow as a collective. And so I have very little interest anymore in having debates or conversations about why we should cut these off. I do believe there could be there are dark forces out there. What those look like, I have no clue, but I'm not really concerned. I'm concerned with the light and us growing the light as much as we possibly can and doing our part to be good stewards of that light. And so that's kind of my stance on it. So hopefully more people recognize that and see that, because through my meditative work, it's brought me nothing but beautiful people and beautiful souls into my life.
Well, I agree with you once again about that. And I have to say, when you first approached me with the idea, my first thought was, well, it's about time.
You told me too, you said that like 50 or 40 years ago, like you were thinking about something like it. And maybe, I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it wasn't the time at that time because it was still...
Yeah, way ahead of its time 40 years ago, but there was an impulse back in the 1970s and 80s. We knew about the remote viewing work at SRI International. It looked like the field of parapsychology was about to take off like a rocket. Well, it didn't quite happen then, but maybe it will happen now for all we know. This could be a real jumpstart for the whole field. And I think it's fair to say, Hakim, that you've enlisted many people in the parapsychology community to support this event.
Yeah, it was very important for me. This is a delicate event, too. It's very important for me to bring together those who can do and like to research, and those who just research, and have all those people in the same room having deep conversations. It's very important. And we have to be very careful with the Psi Games, because you do have, there will be people who don't support it, who are watching it and saying, looking for just the slightest thing to say that this thing is all debunked and it's all fake and it's all this. And you're still going to have those people regardless. But then there's also this flip side of the individuals who are like, it has to be so tightly controlled, that you can't have fun with it, And then there's another aspect where we want to have so much fun that we don't want any controls. So it's like, no, we have to have the sweet spot. It's not and or, it's both. It's how do we have fun, be collaborative, build a community, but also have the research there and have quality challenges that are set up correctly to really make people explore and grow in these abilities, and not just make it a free for all. So that's the balancing act that I've been having to walk, or the line that I've been having to walk to really make this thing happen. Because I don't want to be too far into what the new term is now is woo-woo land, and I don't want to be too far into sterile, research environment. We found through research that you have better results when people have fun than when you scare the hell out of them in some lab somewhere. So, a lab is important, but having fun is also important. So how do we bridge the gap between the two?
Well, I seem to recall that one prominent parapsychologist declined to be involved in the project because he said in his experience, when people are put under a lot of pressure, as they would be in a competitive event, that they don't perform well. Actually, my experience is often the opposite, that the pressure seems to help people perform even better. But I'm sure there are a lot of individual differences on that dimension. But you seem pretty confident that you're going to get a lot of good data out of this event.
Yeah. So I've delved into this. I've been going to the trainings and trained with people and saw how they performed. And if we take the remote viewing, how much more pressure do you need to know that something that you're doing is maybe going to save a life or find somebody who's been kidnapped, and you know your bosses are there at the remote viewing program in the Army saying like, we need this information. That's a lot of pressure, but those guys did it. And they did it in such a way that the research and the data showed that they were successful quite often. They weren't always, but they were successful quite often. Here's the other thing that I hold. Look, people told, and I'm not advocating for this individual, but people told, when Elon Musk said, I want to be the guy who takes people to space and to Mars, he went to NASA because NASA was doing it. They told him he was crazy. You're not an aerospace engineer. You don't have any degrees in this stuff. You don't know what it's like to try to put a person in space. Then he says, well, I'm going to do it, and he changed the game. He found a silo company for a grain silo to make his first, the bodies of his first rockets, right? Which saved him all this money. But nobody was thinking that we were still getting at the time our rockets from Russia, And so he totally changed it. Now NASA has this millions of dollar contract with him. So as long as we are saying to ourselves, well, I did it, it doesn't work, then you cut the cord of the potential for those who come after you, who it may be their mission in this world to create that thing. Maybe it wasn't your mission. Maybe your mission was to do some research in this particular way. But this other kid who may not, or person, or whoever this person is that come, it may be their mission. I'm very careful as a teacher of martial arts, in teaching my students life skills, to not say that, oh, I tried it, you can't do it. Because it might be your mission for your soul in this world to be able to accomplish that task. So my job as a light bringer is to encourage you, to give you my opinion, say, hey, I've tried it, it didn't work for me, but let me hear what you're saying. And maybe it might work for you. That's why I love the conversation you and I had, because you could have very easily said, well, I tried this 40 years ago, it didn't work, so yeah, I don't think it's a possibility. Instead, you said, maybe this is the time. I think you might have something. How can I help you? Yeah. And now where we are, we've got so many people involved, and this thing is happening, and it's happening because there are those of us who still choose to believe that there are those of us whose time it is to bring certain things about into existence. And we're willing to, instead of downplay those things, support those things.
Well, I think it would be a service to let our viewers know that the Psi Games is not just going to be a competition. It's more of a holistic event. You've got lectures planned. Talk a little more about the overall environment.
Oh my gosh, it is so beautiful, Jeffrey. It's turned into something really magical, where we have lectures and speakers. We got keynote speakers, we have lectures, we have workshops. And I didn't just choose just the normal run-of-the-mill type of lectures and workshops. I have a guy who's coming. His name's Nelson. He's a 6-time memory champion. He used to be an atheist. He didn't believe in any of this stuff. And through memory and his experiences with that, then turned remote viewing, then turned the gateway experience, he became somebody who started saying to himself, well, I've been able to do things in the memory field that just don't feel like they're just physical brain operated things. Like I feel like I was storing stuff, and he'll have this conversation storing stuff somewhere else or pulling stuff from somewhere else to win these competitions. And so he's going to talk about the mind and how the mind works from a memory champion. I mean, world champion 6 times, right? He's going to talk about that. I got a guy who's coming who is an NLP and hypnotist specialist who's also been teaching people PK, and he's been helping them overcome their limiting beliefs to say that I can't do this, using NLP and hypnosis to help them move past that, and has gotten some great results. Then I have, Diane Powell, who's been on your show many times. She's going to be there talking about connecting with and the Akashic record and information, and how maybe some of that information is out there in the field and things from a research perspective. So I got people teaching remote viewing. I got people coming to teach mindsight, and teach, energy, movement, and growth. I got Paul Smith, who's coming to talk about different aspects of if you choose to use remote viewing to, do certain things like view anomalous targets. How do you go about that in a sound, very quality way? As well as, he used to be the president of the American Dowsing Association. So he's going to teach some dowsing stuff. I mean, there's going to be so much learning and growth. And again, you might not know anything about parapsychology or psychic abilities, but you have an inkling that you might be good at it or you want to explore it. So you're going to get to learn. You might already have some talent and you're like, I want to make it better. So you're going to get to make it better with people who've been doing it for years and years and years. Or you might want to compete. And so then you're going to be inspired to go in there and find friends that are like you, that are exploring these, and you guys can push each other to the next level. So it's all of that. It's all of that. It's bringing us all together. We have people who are coming, a gentleman who connects you to, a EEG and can read, your brain waves, and he's going to be helping you understand how to look at certain data as you're going into different meditative states, and how to use that focus and getting to those states as a means to help you control certain technology, and so there's going to be so many different people there, so many wonderful things for people to do and get involved in, and to grow themselves and to help grow others. So it's not just sitting and watching a competition. Oh, I have a magician coming, and he's an illusionist, and he's going to talk about like how he went from just being a total magic person where everything was set up to the fine details to where he started to see that there was a such thing as real magic and, performed magic. Mm-hmm. He started having these instances happen where they weren't part of the plan, and he could not explain them using just basic magic and illusionist principles. And so he started to believe that there was something more, and he got into the field of parapsychology. So, I mean, those type of individuals are going to be there. So,
mm-hmm. And I understand the competition itself, it's going to be team competition. You want, if I recall correctly, teams of 5 people competing against each other.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because we actually have since added a team competition, and the team competition was the way we always had it, but we also added an individual competition as well. So now an individual can come, because we want to bring people together. And so you might, and as you know, sometimes there's the field of parapsychology and the things that are going on. You have a lot of groups, and then you have individuals who might be training remotely with those groups. So they don't really have a team, or they're not really sure who to get on their team, but we still have a place for them to come and compete. And maybe they find friends and then they share, and then now next year they have a team, and so that's what we have. So the way it is that we have 5 genres. We have the remote viewing, mindsight, psychokinesis, precognition, and dowsing. And if you have a team of 5 and you sign up to compete as a team, one member from your team will compete in each one of those genres. And then they will get points for how well they perform. And that will go to the team's overall score. And then at the end, whatever teammate or team has the highest score will get first place, second place, third place. And the same for the individuals, but the individuals is a little bit different. So if you're an individual, you can compete in more than one of the categories. So you could say, hey, I'm really good at remote viewing and mind sight, so I want to compete in that. And somebody else may have something else. And then it's kind of the same thing. You'll get points, and then your points will get added up at the end, and then, based on your performance, and then, you'll get first place, second place, or third place. And that's how we're doing the event this year.
And so you're planning to make it an annual event, it seems.
Yes. It's going to be an annual event. And that's where we have the growth, and we have we get to see what's out there and explore. And I'd love to add these two stories really quickly if I can. From what I understand in the remote viewing program when it started many years ago in the 70s, they had Ingo Swann and some other remote viewers, but there was people who weren't on their radar. One of those people was a guy named Pat Price. And Pat, from what I understand, kind of inserted himself into the program because he had this knowledge, this unknown way of knowing that these guys were doing this thing, and kind of approached Hal Puthoff and was like, hey, I know you guys are doing something. I want to be a part of it. And they thought he was a spy or something at first. And what they found once they went through some stuff and found out he wasn't a spy and let him in, was that he was one of the greatest remote viewers they had ever seen. And he was not on their radar. So that's why the Psi Games is really great, because it's an open. This isn't like a secret thing that we have to try to find people. This is open. So maybe we find the 15-year-old Pat Price. And now imagine what it's like to have the 15-year-old Pat Price in a room with all of these high-level researchers and people who have been doing that, who can help mentor that young child for the rest of his life. And now he has a community where he can feel accepted, and he doesn't feel weird, or she, because they have this ability. So that's that aspect of it. And the other thing is, the reason I really want to have it multiple times is my friend who's a memory champion said when they first started having these memory competitions, they were really boring and slow, and there was very few people. And they had no standard for anything, right? So he said then they had this memory competition where you have to pull out a deck of cards and see how fast you can memorize the deck of cards. So they had no standard for that game at first. Then the standard became 30 seconds. Nobody can memorize a deck of cards faster than 30 seconds. And that became the standard for many years. And then a few years later, somebody beat it by like 25 or 24 seconds, he said. So then that became the new standard. Guess what happened the next year? Those people who could not make it past 30 seconds before are now making it 25 seconds, 26 seconds, 28 seconds. They're beating the 30. Just recently, somebody had did it just over 15 seconds. So they found what the standard was, and then they just kept supporting each other and pushing each other to the next level. And that allowed people to go home and practice and come back and be better and keep growing. And that's where we are now. And that's why the Psi Games has to be a yearly event, so that we can continue to push and grow the boundaries of what people believe they're capable of, so they can look at the Chris and the Jeffries and the people out there and say, whoa, I didn't even know that was possible. I need to go try now and see if I could do that. And be hopefully pleasantly surprised when not only they can, but maybe they take us to the next level.
Well, Hakim, I want to congratulate you, and most importantly, I want our viewers to know that I am 100% behind what you're doing, and in fact, I plan to be there as a judge for the Psi Games, and I know you've enlisted, I think, probably close to 100 people from the parapsychology community who are supporting your event. I noticed the Rhine Research Center is now a sponsor of the event. So I am looking forward to being there in August, and I want to encourage our viewers to check out your website. The link will be in the description of this video.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, anyone who goes to your or sees this and wants to participate, and I'm going to give you a discount code as well so that they can get a discount on their tickets. And like you said, we got the Monroe Institute, the Ryan Institute, the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia. They're involved, a really amazing group, DMT Quest, that's talking about how to use your own bodily system to help you release certain, the DMT energy within yourself. And so, we just got so many amazing people are supporting this. And so I'm just super excited about that.
Well, Hakim, thank you so much for coming on New Thinking Aloud and giving our viewers a preview of what to expect over the summer.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jeffrey, for having me.
And for those of you watching or listening, thank you for being with us, because you are the reason that we are here.
Book 3 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is UFOs and UAP, Are We Really Alone? Now available on Amazon.
You can now download a free PDF copy of issue number 8 of the New Thinking Aloud magazine, or order a beautiful printed copy. Go to newthinkingaloud.org